a cold-hearted billionaire, his beautiful pregnant wife, and a betrayal that shattered a $1 billion empire. Ethan Vance thought he had it all, until the night he found his wife, Clara, in a hotel room with his own best friend, Sterling. The photos were undeniable, a night of romance that Ethan could never forgive. Without a single question, he branded her a traitor and threw his pregnant wife out into the freezing streets, vowing to never see her again. But was Clara actually a cheater? Or was there a dark, sinister secret hidden in that room that Ethan wouldn't discover until 5 years later? Why is the world's most powerful man now collapsing in tears during a video call, begging for mercy from the woman he destroyed? Stay tuned until the end, because the truth about that night is so heart-wrenching, it will leave you in tears. This is not just a story of revenge. It's a truth you never saw coming. Welcome back to Mr. James' Family, where we bring you the most emotional, heart-touching, and life-changing stories from around the globe. Before we reveal the shocking video that broke Ethan Vance's heart, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. Join our growing family today, because here we value love, truth, and the power of family over everything else. If you believe that every child deserves a father's love, and every lie eventually comes to light, give this video a big thumbs up. Now, let's get back to the moment Ethan's life changed forever. The ballroom glittered like a crown jewel suspended over Manhattan, 30 floors above traffic. Winter wind clawing at the glass walls, while inside everything shimmered warm and gold. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across marble floors. Silk gowns whispered when women walked. Waiters floated through the crowd with trays of champagne that cost more than some people earned in a month. Clara Moore stood near the balcony doors, her emerald dress catching reflections like soft fire. She didn't try to shine. She simply did. Brown skin glowing under chandelier light. Shoulders straight. Calm in a room addicted to spectacle. Her hand rested lightly on Ethan Vance's arm, not gripping, not demanding. Just there, a quiet anchor beside a man who never stayed still. Ethan didn't notice. He was 3 conversations deep already, laughing too loud, flashing his white, toothed grin at a hedge fund manager while clinking glasses with a senator's aide. The King of Manhattan, people called him. 36 and untouchable. His tailored black tuxedo fit like armor. Clara watched him the way you watch a tide, knowing it would never slow, just because you were standing in its path. She had learned how to wait. At dinners where the soup cooled while he took calls. At galas where his hand slipped from hers before dessert. At home, when he came in after midnight, smelling like cologne and city air, already scrolling through market numbers. She didn't complain. She believed in timing, in patience, in love that didn't need to be loud. Across the room, someone applauded at a joke Ethan made. Cameras flashed. Clara smiled politely, though her wrist ached from holding a glass she hadn't sipped. Her stomach fluttered, not nerves. Something softer. Something new. She had almost told him tonight. Almost. She had rehearsed the words in her head while curling her hair. Ethan, I think we made something beautiful. But the words kept waiting. Just like she always did, a shadow slid into the space beside her. Sterling, Ethan's childhood best friend, business partner, the man who knew every crack in Ethan's armor and wore his own smile like a mask polished daily. He leaned in close enough that she caught the faint scent of mint and expensive whiskey. "You look tired," he said gently. His voice was smooth, too smooth. Clara blinked. "Long night," she replied. "Too many speeches," Sterling said, nodding toward Ethan. "He feeds on crowds." She gave a small laugh. "That he does." Sterling studied her in a way that made her shift her weight, slow, careful, measuring. "Let me get you some water," he offered. "Champagne dehydration is brutal." She hesitated. Not because he was rude, because Sterling always hovered a little too long, watched a little too closely, asked questions that didn't sound dangerous until later. Still, he was Ethan's brother in everything but blood. "Okay," she said. He returned quickly, handing her a slim glass beaded with condensation. Cold. Refreshing. She took a sip. The water tasted faintly metallic. She blamed the glass. Ethan laughed again behind her. Another sip. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Nothing important. Just a reminder from her doctor she hadn't opened yet. 10 minutes later, the room tilted. Not dramatically. Subtly. Like a camera lens drifting out of focus. The chandeliers blurred at the edges. Music stretched thin, notes melting into one another. Laughter slowed, warped, echoing strangely inside her skull. She blinked. Once. Twice. Maybe I didn't eat enough, she thought. Her fingers tightened around the empty glass. Heat crawled up her neck. The marble floor felt softer. Her heel slipped a little. She turned toward Ethan. He was gone. Not physically, he was 10 feet away. But already turned, already leaning into another conversation. She tried to call his name. It came out smaller than she meant. No one heard. Sterling was suddenly at her side again. "You okay?" he asked, too quickly. I think I need air." Her tongue felt thick. He placed a steadying hand near her elbow. "Easy," he murmured. "Crowds do that sometimes." The room swayed harder now. Faces smeared into streaks of color. The chandelier multiplied into 3. She tried to step back. Missed. Sterling's grip tightened, not painful. Firm. Guiding. "I'll take you somewhere quiet," he said. She meant to pull away. She really did. But her arms felt heavy, like they were moving through water. "I should, Ethan." "He's busy," Sterling replied calmly. "I've got you." The words slid into her ears like syrup. Sticky. Slow. They moved through a hallway lined with framed black and white photos of New York skylines. Or maybe she imagined that. The walls tilted. Her clutch slipped from her fingers. Sterling caught it. "You're safe," he whispered. The phrase didn't comfort her. It scared her. Her vision tunneled. The carpet pattern beneath her feet stretched into long, wavy lines. Her chest tightened, not panic exactly, but confusion, like waking up mid-dream. She tried to say his name. It wouldn't form. The last thing she registered was the pressure of his hand at her back, steering, and the click of a door opening somewhere ahead. Darkness rolled over her like a heavy curtain. As Clara's world vanished, a camera somewhere unseen began to blink, quietly recording a night that was about to destroy everything. When Clara woke, the first sensation was wrong. Her mouth tasted metallic, coppery, like iron filing mixed with stale water. She tried to lift her head, and everything around her swayed, tilting and twisting unnaturally. The smell of soap hit her nose next, sharp and expensive, the kind hotels used to convince you that luxury healed everything. But it didn't. Her shoes were gone. Her clutch was missing. Her chest ached, not from injury, but from a rising, inexplicable panic. She tried to sit up fully, but her muscles refused. Her head pounded with a relentless rhythm that felt like someone hammering a small iron rod inside her skull. The bed sheets tangled around her legs, soft yet suffocating. A part of her mind screamed to scream, but her voice was trapped behind her throat. And then the door burst open. Ethan, not calm, not questioning, not even concerned. Rage carved every line of his face. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were dark, thunderous pools of disbelief and fury. Before she could speak, cold water hit her face. A glass shattered near the wall, spraying shards like dangerous confetti across the floor. Clara gasped, choking on water, her trembling hands coming up instinctively to shield her face. "What, Ethan, please?" The words came out as a strangled whisper. Divorce papers fluttered through the air, landing on the bed like cold snow, crisp, white official. She barely processed them before Sterling's soft voice cut through the tension. "I didn't want you to find out like this." Clara blinked, the metallic taste in her mouth mixed with confusion. "Find out what?" she croaked. Ethan didn't answer. He held up his phone. The screen glared at her like a torch. Photos. Her chest constricted. One by one, she saw herself lying on a bed, hair fanned across a pillow, eyes closed, limbs limp. Sterling was seated beside her in each shot, positioned as if they had been close. Too close. Each frame meticulously angled, cruelly designed to tell a story that wasn't true. Clara's hands trembled. I don't understand." "I trusted you," Ethan said quietly. The calm in his voice scared her more than yelling ever could. "Months behind my back." She opened her mouth, but the words froze. "I didn't." Her voice cracked. "I would never. Pack nothing. Leave now." His tone brooked no argument. The air between them was sharp, jagged, cutting. Her stomach twisted. She pressed a hand to it instinctively, remembering something that felt simultaneously urgent and terrifying. "I just found out something today," she said, voice shaking. "I'm pregnant." The moment hung in the air, like a fragile glass ornament teetering on the edge of a shelf. Ethan's laughter came out short and bitter, devoid of any humor. "I don't care whose bastard that is. Get out before I call security." The words echoed in her skull, a hammer driving nails through the fragile walls of her heart. Clara's knees weakened. Her fingers clawed at the bedspread, at anything solid, as though grasping could stop the world from collapsing. Snow swirled outside the hotel windows, cold flakes drifting lazily in the streetlights, a serene contrast to the chaos ripping through her life. Sterling didn't move to stop him. He stood behind Ethan, hands in his pockets, silent. Only his eyes flickered downward, guilt or calculation. She couldn't yet distinguish. Clara forced herself up, shivering, soaked from the water, her hair plastered to her cheeks. The papers crumpled under her fingers. She tried to speak again, tried to argue, to explain. Her voice barely carried. You can't do this," she said, almost pleading. "Ethan, leave." His voice roared now, sharper than before, slicing through the room. He turned his back to her, arms crossed, the perfect posture of someone shielding himself from guilt. Her trembling hands brushed against her stomach again. A wave of nausea hit her. Her mind raced. 5 years. 5 months. The life growing inside her, the one she had quietly, nervously imagined she'd share with him. And now nothing, just rejection. Cold, absolute. She stumbled toward the door, hoping he would stop her. Hoping he would reach for her, call her name, ask questions, anything. But Ethan's eyes never moved from the papers in his hand. Outside, Snow piled silently on Fifth Avenue. Cars hissed through slush. People passed unseeing, unaware. She stepped into the cold, wet night with no coat, no purse, no money, and a life torn from her. The air bit at her skin. Her wet hair clung to her face. She pressed a hand to her belly again, a futile attempt to shield the part of her life that mattered most. She wanted to scream. She wanted to beg. She wanted to make him see her, see the truth, but he didn't look up. He didn't even blink. From the penthouse windows above, the lights glowed like a cruel stage set. Ethan didn't watch her go. Her mind swirled with questions that demanded answers she would never get. How could he believe Sterling over her? How could he not see the lies? How could he destroy everything with a flick of his wrist and a flash of a photo? She stumbled down the steps. Snowflakes melted into the damp fabric of her dress, soaking her further. Her legs trembled, but she forced one foot in front of the other. She couldn't stay here, in the cold. Not yet. Not until she could breathe again. Not until she could think. Every sound around her amplified. The crunch of slush beneath boots, the distant hum of a taxi, the sharp crack of ice from a nearby sidewalk. Her pulse thundered in her ears, each beat reminding her of the life inside her, of what she had to protect. She looked back once. The penthouse loomed above, light spilling from floor to ceiling windows. Her world had ended inside those walls, but she had survived. Somehow, against all odds, she was still standing. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, shivering in the freezing night. She did not cry. Not yet. Crying would make her weak. She needed strength. Strength for the child, strength for herself, strength to navigate a city that suddenly felt impossibly vast and indifferent. And then she noticed it. A shadow, moving far down the avenue. A sleek black sedan slowing, headlights scanning the street, its engine idle just long enough to be noticed. She froze, her heart catching in her throat. Her instincts screamed at her to run. Her body wanted to flee. Yet she stood rooted to the spot, trembling, vulnerable. Clara didn't know who it was, or if it was dangerous. But something about the way it lingered felt deliberate, watching, waiting. Her chest tightened. She pressed her hand harder against her belly, the only thing in her life that still belonged to her. She took a deep breath. The snow fell around her, silent and thick, masking the hum of the city. Her life had been ripped apart in 20 minutes. And now, it seemed, the night had not yet finished with her. The sedan's door clicked open slowly. Footsteps echoed on wet pavement. Clara's heartbeat thundered. She turned, just in time to see a figure step from the shadows, watching her with a smile that didn't reach their eyes. The shadow in the street remained for a heartbeat too long. Clara's pulse slammed in her ears as her eyes tracked its slow, deliberate movement. The figure didn't step closer, didn't even move forward, just watched, waiting, calculating. The snow swirled around them both, muffling the city sounds, yet the quiet was louder than any horn, any chatter. Clara pressed herself against the side of a building, cold seeping through her wet dress, heart pounding like a drum in a silent symphony. The figure remained. She strained her eyes but could not see details. Her instincts screamed danger. Yet something in the posture, in the patience, hinted at knowledge, recognition. And then the figure turned. One hand lifted slightly, as if signaling something, though she could not tell whether it was friendly or menacing. Clara's knees buckled. She stepped back, snow crunching beneath her heels. Somewhere inside her, A part of her screamed, "Run. Don't look back." Her life had already shattered tonight. She had no coat, no money, no phone, no protection except herself and the life she carried within her. But she could not flee blind. Not now. The figure began walking backward slowly, retreating into the shadows, leaving behind a faint echo of movement. Clara did not breathe until the footsteps faded entirely. Her legs shook as she turned and continued down the avenue, weaving through indifferent crowds, feeling the sting of snow in her eyes and the hollow ache in her chest. The city was alive, yet utterly unaware of the storm inside her. 5 years passed like a brutal winter for Ethan Vance. In those years, the king of Manhattan became colder, harder, meaner. Every business deal, every boardroom negotiation, every handshake was executed with precision and zero mercy. He built empires on fear, charm, and intimidation. But behind the sharp suits and towering skyscrapers, there was a quiet vacancy, a space that once belonged to someone he had destroyed and could never replace. Sterling had died quickly, a car accident on a rain-slicked highway, headlines screaming tragedy. Closed casket. Sympathy cards that Ethan didn't read. He barely acknowledged the man's death, beyond a nod to the press. Sterling's absence did not heal him. It did not erase the lie that had severed his only true connection. It only left him with questions he refused to ask. Weeks later, long after midnight, Ethan sat alone in his private office, the city lights glowing like distant stars behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was scrolling through Sterling's old company servers, a habit he had taken up with morbid curiosity. Contracts, budgets, investor notes, mundane at first until something unusual caught his eye. A folder, bold, named clearly. Tiva. His pulse quickened. He hesitated before clicking. Inside, nothing but videos. Security footage, hotel footage, hallway cameras, lobby cameras, time-stamped, raw, unedited. Ethan leaned forward, the glow from his laptop casting long shadows across the room. He paused the first frame. A familiar corridor appeared, the same hotel hallway where it had all begun years ago. The carpet patterned in muted golds, the walls adorned with generic framed prints. And there, emerging from the darkness of the hall, was Sterling. He was carrying Clara. Her body was limp, suspended in his arms like a rag doll. Her head lolled back, dark hair brushing the edge of the hallway wall. She did not struggle. She did not stir. Ethan's breath hitched. His fingers tightened on the desk. The camera angle shifted, entering the hotel room itself. Sterling laid her gently on the bed, smoothing the sheets as if he were tucking a child in for the night. His movements were precise, deliberate, careful. He stepped back, adjusted the camera, positioned himself for photos. Every motion screamed premeditation. Then Sterling looked into the camera and smiled. A slow, cruel smile. The sound of his laughter followed, a soft chuckle that echoed in the quiet office, as if the speaker had been inside Ethan's skull all these years. Ethan ripped the headphones off, too late. The echo lingered in his ears. His pulse thundered, deafening, making the room tilt and spin. He pressed rewind, watched again. The angle, the lighting, the way Sterling had framed her to make it look intimate. Every detail screamed manipulation, every movement a trap, and Clara had done nothing. Nothing. For the first time in years, the truth hit him like a tidal wave. He had destroyed the only woman who had ever loved him, truly loved him without expectation. He had believed a lie. "I destroyed her," he whispered. The words left his lips barely audible, yet they shook the room like a curse. His reflection in the dark glass behind the laptop seemed smaller than he remembered. The billionaire, the king, the invincible man gone, reduced to guilt and horror. Ethan leaned back in his chair, chest heaving, hands shaking. He tried to process the timeline. 5 years, a lie, a lost child, a lost life. Questions erupted like a storm. Why did Sterling do this? Why did he let it happen? Why had he not known, not seen, not questioned? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to delete the folder, to erase the evidence, to pretend it didn't exist, but he couldn't. Every frame screamed the truth at him, burning into his mind with a clarity he could not ignore. And then, another video file caught his attention. Titled, "Aradudu Fuj Nau Idises." Curiosity mixed with dread forced him to click. The footage began exactly where he had feared. Sterling carried Clara to the room. But this time, he followed every motion, her limp form, her helplessness, the way she had tried to murmur words he couldn't hear. He paused it, zoomed in. The horror pressed into Ethan's chest like a physical weight. Sterling laughed again. Not at her. Not even at the photos he had staged. At him. At Ethan Vance. The realization slammed into him like a fist. The betrayal, the destruction of their love, the destruction of his life's happiness. It had all been orchestrated by the one person he had trusted most. The one person he had considered a brother. Ethan's hands went to his face. He pressed his palms against his eyes, fingers digging in as though he could physically erase the past. It did not work. He watched the footage again and again. By dawn, the office was silent. Only the hum of the city below. Only the faint drip of condensation from the window. Ethan sat slumped, knees drawn close, shaking, hollow-eyed. His empire, his wealth, his influence, they meant nothing compared to the life he had thrown away. He had believed a lie. He had destroyed the woman who had loved him, and he had never seen it coming. Ethan's eyes widened as a new file appeared on the screen, one he hadn't noticed before. Its label was simple, chilling. Teach Sidrati Sich Cree. He clicked it. And froze. Ethan didn't sleep that night. Not a minute, not an hour. His apartment, normally a sanctuary of glass and steel, felt empty and hollow. The city lights streamed through the floor, 2 ceiling windows, painting the marble floors with gold and white streaks. He walked back and forth, hands shoved deep into his pockets, jaw tight. Every surface, his desk, his couch, the untouched champagne from a celebration weeks ago, felt like it mocked him. He called old contacts, hiring private investigators under burner emails, pseudonyms, accounts no one could trace. He checked charities where Clara had once volunteered, hospitals she might have visited, emergency shelters. Every lead turned cold. Every trail ended in dead silence, except one: Seattle. The name repeated itself like a mantra. Clara Moore. Seattle. Her name alone ignited a storm of regret and longing he had refused to feel for years. But the trail didn't end there. Another name surfaced: Marianne Brooks, former tech executive, a quiet legend. Someone the media barely noticed, yet her influence ran deep. Banks hesitated when she backed women, led ventures. Investors whispered her name like it opened doors they didn't even know existed. Ethan stared at his screen, disbelief and hope mingling in a toxic cocktail. Clara Moore was listed as CEO of Brooks Pacific Holdings. CEO. The word echoed in his mind, almost like a slap. CEO. She had done it. She had survived. She had thrived. She had built something he could never take away, no matter how many billions he held in his bank account. He didn't hesitate. Not to think, not to question. He booked the first flight to Seattle. No calls, no explanations, no team. Just him, and the gnawing need to see the woman he had lost, the woman he had betrayed. When he arrived, the city greeted him with the quiet rhythm of drizzle and grey skies. Streets gleamed with wet asphalt, neon reflections bouncing like broken mirrors. He made his way to the Brooks Pacific building, a glass tower rising above the grey, smelling faintly of cedar and rain. The scent reminded him of winter mornings, of warm fireplaces he had never shared with Clara, and he felt smaller than he had in years. Inside, he waited in the lobby. The receptionist barely looked up. Clear security protocols. Professional. Efficient. He was shown into a glass-walled office. Minimalist but alive with energy. Plants, a small stack of books, a laptop open, a notebook filled with neat writing. Behind the desk stood Marianne Brooks, tall, composed, brown hair streaked with subtle silver at the temples, eyes sharp but calm. She didn't rise immediately. She waited, observed, calculated. "She didn't want you finding her," Marianne said softly, her tone as measured as a chess player's move. Ethan's voice surprised even him. "I don't deserve to." She studied him a long second, tilting her head, assessing him as if weighing the possibility of trust. "She showed up 5 years ago." Marianne began, frostbitten fingers, "No ID, pregnant, refusing to curse your name. She only asked for work." Ethan swallowed. His throat burned. Words lodged behind a wall of shame. "She worked nights?" Marianne continued. "Learned contracts while rocking a newborn. Built companies that made mine look small. And she never asked for revenge." Ethan's hand clenched. His chest tightened. Every word was a blow and a revelation. The woman he had cast into the snow, homeless, frightened, was now towering above him in success and dignity. "She built it for survival," Marianne added, leaning slightly forward. "Not for vengeance. Not for money. For survival for her son, and for herself." Ethan turned his gaze to the window behind her. Rain streaked down the glass like tears he had refused to shed. The skyline of Seattle blurred. It all felt small, distant. His empire of glass and steel seemed fragile compared to the life Clara had built. He wanted to call her. He wanted to demand answers, to apologize, to beg. He had her number in his phone. It burned a hole in his pocket. But he didn't call. Not yet. Instead, he left the office, walking slowly, absorbing the quiet cedar scent, the steady rhythm of rain, the faint hum of the city. He felt smaller, yes. But there was clarity in that smallness. Understanding. The knowledge that he could no longer undo what she had built, nor what he had destroyed. Outside, he lingered on the sidewalk, hands in pockets, looking up at the glass tower where she worked. Somewhere inside, Clara Moore was untouchable now. She had a life, a purpose, a power he could only admire from afar. He had been a king once. Now, he was merely a man confronted by his own failures. Every instinct screamed at him to reach out, to explain, to reclaim. But another voice, quieter yet sharper, whispered the truth he could not deny. She had survived. She had thrived. And she didn't need him. His phone vibrated. A text from an assistant he had sent hours ago. Flight confirmed. Hotel booked. Everything ready. He pocketed it. No movement. No action. He was a man immobilized by guilt, fear. Ethan wandered through Seattle streets in the rain, the cold soaking through his coat. But he didn't notice. His mind replayed flashes of Clara's face, the strength in her eyes, the tiny ways she had survived, the power she now wielded silently yet undeniably. Somewhere along the walk, he realized something he hadn't admitted before. He had never known what real strength looked like until now. Not in money, not in status, not in control. Real strength was resilience, patience, and quiet determination. Clara Moore had all of it, and he had wasted years, blind to it, blind to her, blind to himself. The city's lights blurred through the rain on glass windows, casting reflections of Ethan's tall, tense frame. He stopped in the middle of the street. A taxi honked. People passed by, unaware of the storm raging in the man who once thought he ruled the world. Finally, he stopped walking. He lifted his hand, hovered over his phone again. Her number stared back at him. His thumb trembled, and he did nothing. Not yet. A faint notification blinked in the corner of his screen. Not from her. Not from anyone he knew. Just a message. You shouldn't have come here alone, Ethan Vance. 3 days passed in a blur for Ethan. Sleep barely grazed him. Every shadow in his hotel room seemed alive. Every tick of the clock a drum counting down the moments until he could no longer avoid what he had been running from. Clara Moore. Her number sat in his phone like a guilty secret, glowing quietly, demanding acknowledgement. 3 days. 3 days of pacing, staring out at the rainy Seattle streets, of wondering if she would even answer. And finally, he did it. His thumb hovered over the screen. The video call. The moment stretched like the space between breaths before a storm. Ring. Ring. The world narrowed. Connected. There she was, Clara Moore. And for a heartbeat, the years fell away, as if he had stepped into a memory that had grown into something untouchable. She looked unreal. Tailored ivory blazer over a soft blouse. Hair braided and pulled neatly back, exposing the curve of her jaw, the sharp focus of her cheekbones. Her eyes, brown, deep, calm, held a stillness that made his chest ache. Strength radiated from her in slow, deliberate pulses, as if every breath she drew was a statement. I survived. I am whole. And then he saw him. A little boy on her lap, curly hair, blue eyes. The same piercing shade that once haunted Ethan in his own reflection. His heart collided with something inside him he hadn't felt in years. His knees buckled before he could control them. His legs failed him, and he dropped out of frame onto the cold floor of his penthouse office. Clara didn't flinch. Not a muscle. She simply held her son closer, kissed the top of his temple, as if the moment was ordinary and yet impossibly profound. Clara. His voice broke, raw and desperate, cracking like ice under weight. The video. I know now. The boy's head tilted slightly. Small, uncertain, like he was sensing tension he didn't understand. Clara's lips pressed to his hair again. Quiet, reassuring, protective. Ethan's chest rose and fell erratically. He crawled back into frame, wiping tears streaking his face with the back of his hand. His reflection in the screen was unrecognizable. That's my son, he whispered, voice trembling. Yes, she said simply. No flourish, no relief. Just the undeniable truth, steady and unwavering. He swallowed hard, feeling the air leave his lungs in a rush. I'll give you everything, he gasped. My name, my company, my life. Just let me come to you. Let me meet him. Let me. For a dangerous, fleeting second, hope crept into his voice. Pride, desperation, guilt, and longing wrapped into one tremulous note. Clara's expression didn't change. Not a flicker of surprise. Not a hint of warmth. She studied him as one might study a storm from behind a safe window, knowing its power but unaffected by its movement. You think it's that simple? She asked softly, her voice a calm blade cutting through his words. You think your billions, your apologies, your tears can fix 5 years of betrayal. 5 years of choices I had to make without you. Ethan's throat tightened. The weight of every harsh word he had spoken, every cruel glance, every rejection of her truth pressed down on him. He wanted to argue. He wanted to cry louder. But the sound stuck in his chest, raw and bitter. Clara, he tried again. I was blind. I know that now. She lifted her son slightly, brushing back a curl from his forehead. He doesn't know you yet, she said. And that's how it will stay. For now, until you understand what it means to be a father. Not the father you imagined. Not the father you wanted to be. The father he deserves. Her words landed like stones in his chest, sharp, cold, necessary. He swallowed again, struggling to breathe. I can do that. I'll learn. I'll change. Just please let me try. Clara's eyes held him, steady and unwavering. The little boy yawned softly, leaning into her warmth, completely unaware of the storm his father carried across thousands of miles of glass and air waves. For the first time, Ethan felt powerless. For the first time, he realized that money, influence, even regret, none of it could force her hand. None of it could undo the years he had lost, the life he had shattered. He wanted to beg. He wanted to kneel. He wanted to crumble. But she did not offer him that escape. She did not soften. And he understood, in the deepest core of his being, that the real test was not his wealth, not his name, not even his promises. It was trust, respect, time, actions, and he had none of that yet. The video call continued, frozen in an uneasy quiet. Ethan's breaths echoed in his empty office, mingling with the faint hum of the city below. The little boy leaned into his mother's chest, safe and warm. Ethan's hands shook. Tears rolled freely. I will wait, he said finally, voice rough, a whisper of surrender and hope. Clara didn't respond immediately. She simply watched him, measured and unyielding. And in that silent gaze, Ethan understood nothing would be easy. Nothing could be taken for granted. Every word, every step, every action would matter. The boy looked up again, curiosity flickering in his blue eyes. He asked, voice small, innocent. Clara's hand moved to still him. Not yet, she said firmly. Not yet, love. Ethan's chest heaved. The gravity of her words crushed him, yet somehow ignited a fire he had never known. The man who once believed he could command everything now understood the truth. He had to earn this. Every bit of it. He nodded, swallowing his pride, swallowing his shame. The billionaire had never felt smaller. Yet, in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: clarity, purpose, responsibility. The screen blinked. A faint echo of movement caught Ethan's eye. Behind Clara, in the soft shadows of the office, a figure appeared, tall, deliberate, watching. Not a visitor, not a colleague. Someone who knew more than Ethan could imagine. And then the screen went black. Ethan's chest heaved. He was staring at the screen, hands trembling, fingers hovering over the edge of the desk, as if the world itself was tilting beneath him. His mind tried to process what he had just seen: Clara Moore, calm, controlled, unshakable. His son in her lap, safe, whole, happy. And yet there was something else behind her now. "You don't get to bargain now," she said. Her tone wasn't sharp. It wasn't laced with anger or melodrama. It was empty, like a winter street stripped bare, like silence after a storm. It carried the weight of years spent surviving alone, of nights shivering in the dark, of every fear and every battle she had fought without him. "You threw me into snow while I was carrying him. You called him a mistake before he had lungs." The words hit him harder than any fist ever could. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat seized. For once, no amount of money, influence, or power could break the grip of truth. "I slept in shelters. I worked kitchens. I studied while he slept on my chest," she continued, her voice calm, deliberate, measured. Each syllable was a dagger. "You dated models on yachts. You celebrated deals and parties while I counted pennies to buy diapers." Ethan's fingers twitched on the desk. He wanted to speak, wanted to apologize, wanted to cry, wanted to undo everything. But she didn't pause. She didn't wait for him to beg. She simply told the truth, the full, crushing weight of it. She turned the laptop slightly, just enough for him to see. Behind her, the office walls gleamed with evidence of her triumph. Awards, certificates, framed articles. Screens flashed news headlines. Market tickers scrolled by, alive with activity. And at the heart of it all, one name dominated: Brooks Pacific Holdings. "Brooks Pacific outbid you 3 times last quarter," she said softly. Ethan blinked. Once, twice. His mind scrambled, trying to comprehend the enormity of what he was witnessing. She had not just survived, she had dominated. And she had done it quietly, meticulously, deliberately. She leaned closer to the camera, her eyes locked on his. Every ounce of calm strength radiated from her. Every heartbeat told him what he had lost. Every pause reminded him of what he had destroyed. "That was me," she said simply. Silence roared in his ears. The room around him vanished. The empire he had built felt hollow, fragile, insignificant. He realized, finally, that he had been living in a fantasy of control, while she had been building reality. "You missed us?" she asked. Her voice low, deliberate, cutting through the roar of his own guilt. "Good. Sit with that." Ethan's hands curled into fists. He wanted to leap through the screen. He wanted to scream. He wanted to beg for even the smallest shred of forgiveness. But he could do nothing. Her finger hovered over the trackpad, deliberate and slow, her presence as commanding as any physical force. "As far as we're concerned, Ethan, you died 5 years ago." Click, the screen went black. For a moment, nothing existed. Only the humming of his office, the faint glow of city lights, and the echo of her words, repeating inside his mind like a relentless mantra. "You died 5 years ago." Ethan slumped in his chair, his head falling forward, hands still trembling. The truth was clear, bitter, and undeniable. She had not waited for him to change. She had not waited for him to apologize. She had moved on. She had survived. She had risen. She had reclaimed every ounce of power he thought belonged to him. For the first time, he felt the full weight of absolute loss. The world he had ruled, the empire he had built, even the billions he had amassed. It was all meaningless compared to what he had lost in a single moment of blind rage and trust in a liar. Ethan pressed his forehead against the desk. His breath hitched. The sound of his heartbeat thundered in his ears, unrelenting. The life he had destroyed, the woman he had betrayed, and the son he had never known, all of it pressed down like a mountain on his chest. He didn't notice the door to his office, quietly opening. A shadow stretched across the floor, long and deliberate. He didn't hear the soft click of heels against marble. He didn't see the figure approaching. He was consumed by the screen's emptiness, by the absence of Clara's presence, by the stark reality of his own failure. Somewhere in the depths of his mind, a question formed, one that clawed at him with equal parts terror and desire. How could she have built all this? How could she thrive while he had done nothing but drown in wealth and regret? A knock at the office door, almost imperceptible, broke the silence. He lifted his head, heart hammering. The shadows in the room shifted. Something moved just beyond the light. Ethan's pulse spiked. He rose slowly from his chair, every muscle tense, eyes scanning, body trembling with anticipation, dread, and the barest flicker of hope. And then he heard a voice, low, calm, familiar yet foreign. "You think it's over, Ethan. You think she will just forgive and forget." He froze. The office felt smaller, tighter. The city's hum faded. His empire, his wealth, his identity, all meaningless in the presence of what was about to unfold. A figure stepped fully into the light behind him. Not Clara, not the boy, someone else. And in that moment, Ethan realized the storm he had thought ended 5 years ago had only just begun. Ethan stayed on the floor for hours. Not a sound stirred in the penthouse. Not the hum of the city. Not the soft echo of his own heartbeat. Even the lights seemed dimmer, shadows longer, stretching across the marble as though mocking him. He didn't move. He couldn't move. Every muscle, every nerve, every fiber of him was consumed by what he had just witnessed. No assistants appeared with coffee, no emails buzzed for approval. No urgent phone calls demanded his attention. Just the silent glass walls reflecting the man he had been. His reflection stared back at him, tall, impeccably dressed, but hollow-eyed. The sharp jaw, the designer suit, the prestige, they all meant nothing. For the first time in decades, money felt useless, empty, futile. He thought of Clara, her calm, unwavering strength, her son, eyes so much like his own. Every choice she had made without him. The life she had built while he had been drowning in arrogance and regret. He realized he had nothing. Not her trust, not her forgiveness, not even the chance to see his son beyond a fleeting video call. The next morning, he sold one penthouse. Not quietly, not discreetly. The press swarmed, snapping photos, spinning headlines. He didn't care. Then another. Resigned from 2 boards of companies he had spent years building. Publicly stepped down as CEO. The stockholders and media reacted with shock, disbelief, even scorn. The news cycle went feral. Ethan didn't care. He started funding shelters in New York. Not with his name, not with announcements, not for recognition. Anonymous donations. Food, warmth, clothing. Assistance for single mothers. Refuge for women who had nowhere else to turn. He thought of Clara, the countless nights she had spent shivering, afraid and alone. Every donation was a quiet apology, a tribute, a step toward atonement. He sent letters he never mailed. One to Clara, one to the boy whose face haunted him in dreams and waking moments alike. "I am trying to become someone you were never meant to survive," he wrote. the words trembling on paper as if they carried his blood and shame. He folded them, carefully, with hands that shook, and then burned them in the fireplace. The smoke curled like memory, like regret, like the past rising to taunt him. Transformation wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It didn't come with applause or fanfare. It was quiet, relentless, painful. Each day he walked through his empty apartment, feeling the absence of power, influence, and wealth as a weight pressing on his shoulders. He stopped noticing the clocks, the calendar, even meals. He only noticed the hollow echo of himself. Ethan visited the city's underbelly, not as a billionaire, but as a man stripped bare. He learned the names of the mothers, the children, the volunteers. He carried blankets, built tables, scrubbed floors. The work was grueling, exhausting, often thankless. But it burned something away inside him, the arrogance, the entitlement, the ego. Night after night, he lay awake, thinking of Clara, thinking of her hands, small and strong, holding their child, thinking of her eyes, unflinching and unforgiving. He saw her victories reflected everywhere, on every wall of Brooks Pacific, on every news headline, in every quiet action she had taken to rise from nothing. He thought of Sterling, the betrayal, the lies, the careful orchestration that had destroyed the life he now regretted with every fiber of his being. But the anger no longer burned in the same way. It had been replaced with a raw, aching sorrow, a sorrow that gnawed at him, that forced him to look inward and see the magnitude of what he had lost and what he needed to rebuild, if he ever could. One rainy evening, he walked through a neighborhood in Manhattan, where the lights were dim, where children played with threadbare toys and mothers smiled despite exhaustion. He stopped at a small playground, watching a little boy chase a tattered ball, laughing freely. Something inside him cracked open. That laugh, that innocence, that life. It could have been his son. It might have been, if only he had listened, if only he had trusted. Ethan knelt on the wet pavement, fingers tracing the rusted swings, imagining the small hands that would someday grasp his. He pressed his forehead against the cold metal, letting the rain soak him, cleanse him. Each drop felt like absolution he hadn't earned. Each heartbeat, a reminder of the life he had destroyed and the life he longed to protect. He began to journal, something he had never done before. Words poured out like rivers of guilt and longing. Memories of Clara, memories of moments he had taken for granted. Every whispered apology, every imagined embrace, every plan to be worthy. Ethan's transformation was painfully slow. Every day, he was confronted with who he had been and who he wanted to become. The empire he had ruled once with arrogance no longer mattered. He was learning to rule only himself, his impulses, his mistakes. He never stopped thinking of Clara, never stopped imagining her face, the curve of her smile, the strength in her spine. Every letter he burned, every dollar given anonymously, every act of humility was a step toward understanding what it meant to be a man worthy of the woman he had loved. One night, as he walked past a quiet cafe, his phone buzzed. A message flashed. No name, no number saved. You think you've changed, Ethan, but some debts aren't paid with charity or regret. Be ready. Ethan froze. His pulse spiked. The streets, once familiar, now felt like a maze. Someone was watching, waiting. And the game he thought had ended was only beginning. Seattle rain tapped gently against Clara's windows. The soft rhythm filled the spacious office, mingling with the faint scratch of pencils against paper. She watched her son, small and absorbed, carefully drawing with crayons at her desk. His curly hair fell into his forehead, blue eyes focused, lips slightly pursed in concentration. Every line he drew, every tiny smudge of color, was a reminder of the life she had built, of survival, of love, and of triumph over the man who had once thrown her into the snow. Marianne stood beside her, hands folded neatly in front, her gaze quiet but perceptive. She had watched Clara rise from frostbitten fingers and homelessness to CEO of Brooks Pacific Holdings. She had seen the battles fought in silence, the nights spent working contracts while rocking a newborn, the strategy meetings during coffee breaks in quiet corners. Marianne knew the truth. Clara's empire was not built for revenge, but for protection. He stepped down. Marianne said softly, her voice careful. Clara didn't need to look up. She already knew. "I know," she replied, her tone even, composed. Marianne raised an eyebrow. "You don't look surprised." "I didn't build this to watch him fall," Clara said, her eyes scanning the skyline, the office, the world she had conquered through diligence, patience, and sheer will. "I built it so my son would never need him." Her words were firm, measured heavy with years of truth. Not triumph, not malice, simply purpose. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it sit. She didn't even glance. The world of the past, the man who had once destroyed her, didn't matter here. Not anymore. Across the country, Ethan stared at his phone in disbelief. The call that never connected, the message unanswered. The silent wall of distance and choice between them. It was heavier than any boardroom defeat, any loss of wealth, any personal failure. The empire he had thought would bring him everything now felt hollow. The cold steel of Manhattan could not reach her, could not touch the boy who bore his face. He realized, finally, the full cost of his arrogance, his rage, his blindness. He had lost everything that mattered, and there was no currency in the world that could buy it back. Meanwhile, Clara leaned down, lifting her child into her arms. His small hands clung to her, and she felt the weight of her love and responsibility. "Ready to go home, champ?" she asked softly, her voice gentle but resolute. He nodded, smiling, eyes wide with trust. The trust she had earned, built from scratch, protecting him from a world that could be cruel, just as it had been to her. She stood and straightened, holding him close. The office around her gleamed. Sleek glass walls, polished floors, awards, contracts, and screens scrolling with stock tickers and company news. Everything she had built with her hands and mind, every sleepless night, every choice made in solitude. It all was hers, a fortress of survival and power. But power without love, without purpose, had never been the goal. Her son, safe and loved, was the only empire that truly mattered. Clara shut off the office lights. One by one, the screens blinked off. The contracts, the proofs, the accolades, all of it went dark. The tangible markers of success and authority disappeared into shadows. And yet, the room didn't feel empty. It felt whole. It felt like freedom. She walked through the quiet hallways, carrying her son. Rain streaking the glass outside, the world muted and serene. Each step was deliberate, steady, calm. She was not running from the past. She was simply leaving it behind. shutting the door on what had once haunted her. Behind her, the past stayed locked outside. Ethan, wealth, betrayal, heartbreak, they were all echoes now. She had survived. She had risen. She had won, not by destroying anyone, but by building a life no one could touch. The city around her hummed with life, indifferent to her victories and trials. Yet she felt it all. The culmination of years of resilience, love, and unwavering commitment to the future. The soft patter of rain was a lullaby and a promise, reminding her that she could protect, nurture, and live fully. And for the first time in 5 years, she did not feel fear. She did not feel doubt. She did not feel the emptiness of being powerless. She was whole. Her son was whole. The life she had fought for, clawed for, and built with patient hands and fierce determination was hers. Across the continent, Ethan sank deeper into his own reflection. He had once ruled Manhattan, the financial world, and every room he entered. Now, he understood that control, money, and influence were meaningless against the quiet power of love, integrity, and survival. The woman he had thrown into snow, the child he had doubted, had risen in ways he could not imagine, ways he could not reach. The billionaire he had been, the man who had thought he controlled everything, was now a man with nothing but memory, regret, and the faint hope that maybe one day he could earn forgiveness. Clara paused at the office door, rain streaking the glass behind her. She looked down at her son, smiling softly. "Come on, love," she said, the weight of every struggle melting into this single moment of clarity. "Let's go home." And as she walked out into the rainy streets, the empire, the accolades, and the proof of her rise remained behind her. Powerless without purpose. The only thing she needed was in her arms, the only thing that ever mattered. For the first time, the billionaire was not the one in control. She held her son tighter. The rain soaked her coat. The city's lights shimmered off puddles. The world continued, unaware, but she knew her victory was complete. Not loud, not vengeful, not destructive, but final. She had endured. She had risen. She had won. Her past would never define her. Her son would never need to fear the man who had once been king. And in that, she found the ultimate power, freedom, love, and truth. As Clara walked through the rain, the phone in her bag vibrated once. She glanced down. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoy your victory while you can. Some debts are never buried." She tightened her grip on her son's hand and kept walking, undeterred. But a faint shadow of uncertainty flickered in her mind.